The sun shone brightly over the vast, tranquil fields of Texas. The small farm, surrounded by scattered trees, seemed like a refuge untouched by the rush of the modern world. The house, simple but welcoming, was home to little Ellie, just 2 years old, and her parents, Maria and Thomas. That day, like many others, Maria was in the kitchen, chopping fresh vegetables picked in the morning. The smell of earth and rosemary mingled with the heat of the griddle warming up lunch. From time to time, she glanced out of the window towards the courtyard. There, Ellie, with her fine blonde hair and curious blue eyes, was playing in the dirt. Her small hands tried to pile up pebbles, but she quickly knocked them over with an infectious laugh. "Ellie, be careful not to put those pebbles in your mouth, eh?" Maria shouted, half laughing, as she stirred a pot. "No, Mom," replied Ellie in her sweet little voice, although the exact meaning of the order perhaps escaped her comprehension. The courtyard was surrounded by a high wooden fence, erected by Thomas to keep predators out. He was proud of this construction and often repeated it. "Our little girl is safer here than anywhere else in the world." While Thomas mended a fence in the distant field, Maria trusted in the little world they had created for Ellie. But that day, something new disrupted the routine. Through the window, Maria noticed a figure flying across the clear sky. An enormous bird, majestically dark, seemed to circle over the property. Its spread wings seemed to draw shadows on the ground, and its cries echoed among the trees. Maria came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, and stood on the veranda watching the animal. It was an eagle of impressive size. Although birds of prey were common in the region, Maria had never seen one so large. The bird seemed to be fixated on the girl, who continued to play in the courtyard, oblivious to the predator's presence. "Thomas!" Maria called out loudly, but the wind carried her voice away. Turning her eyes to the sky, she tried to dispel her growing fear. "It can't be anything. Just an eagle passing by," she muttered to herself, trying to convince herself. Even so, her heart was racing. For the rest of the day, the eagle's presence didn't disappear. It flew low, landed in nearby trees, and remained there, motionless, as if keeping watch. When Thomas returned in the late afternoon, Maria didn't hesitate to tell him what she had seen. "It was a huge eagle, Thomas. It stayed here all day, watching Ellie." He laughed, trying to calm his wife down. "Maria, you're seeing things. Eagles aren't interested in people. They hunt rabbits, rodents, but never a child." "I don't know, Thomas. There was something about the way she looked. It seemed strange." Thomas sighed, tired from working in the fields. "I'll keep an eye open, okay? But for now, let's enjoy the evening. No eagle will spoil it." Maria tried to relax, but even during dinner, her eyes involuntarily turned to the window. Something inside her told her that this bird wasn't like the others, and this feeling seemed increasingly difficult to ignore. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, the eagle's shrill cry was the first thing Maria heard. The sound seemed closer, almost like a warning. What it could mean, she didn't know. Yet, Maria stood up hurriedly, feeling a chill run down her spine as she heard the sound again. She opened the living room curtains and saw the eagle, perched atop a wooden post beside the courtyard. Its eyes, piercing and fierce, were fixed directly on Ellie, who was already playing on the floor with her makeshift toys. "Thomas!" Maria called urgently, running to the back door. He emerged carrying a shovel, a worried expression on his face when he heard his wife's tone. "What now, Maria?" She pointed to the post. "Look at that! She's back!" "I told you something was wrong." Thomas looked at the eagle and, for a moment, his face hardened. He didn't want to admit it, but the imposing nature of the animal bothered him. The eagle seemed larger than he remembered, with its wings slightly spread, as if it were ready to take flight at any moment. "It must be a coincidence. Maybe it found a nest around here," he suggested, trying to calm Mary and himself down. "Coincidence? Thomas, she can't take her eyes off our daughter," Maria replied. her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. He watched Ellie for a moment, laughing by herself, completely oblivious to her parents' concern. "Tell you what, I'm going to work nearby today. If she gets close, I'll take care of it." Maria nodded, but the discomfort remained. She went back into the kitchen, but her eyes didn't leave the window for more than a few seconds. The presence of the eagle was a weight she couldn't explain. And that scream, it sounded like something more than a simple call. While Thomas was repairing a fence on the other side of the courtyard, he kept the eagle in his peripheral vision. The animal didn't move, as if waiting for the right moment to act. The day passed, and although the bird hadn't moved on, it was still there, always watching. In the late afternoon, as the sky began to turn orange, the eagle suddenly took flight, hovering low over the courtyard. Maria dropped what she was doing and ran to the door. Thomas also stopped what he was doing and walked towards the girl. "Ellie, come here," Maria called out, trying not to sound terrified. The little girl stood up slowly, curious at the movement of the eagle above her head. Her little arms were raised, as if she was trying to touch it. "Big bird," said Ellie with a laugh. Thomas hastened his pace, picking up his daughter on his lap as he looked up at the sky. The eagle circled once more and finally disappeared over the horizon. The tension seemed to dissipate, but not for Maria. "This isn't right, Thomas. It can't just be a coincidence." He sighed, tired of the argument. "I'll get my rifle tomorrow. If she comes back, we'll sort it out." Maria looked at him hesitantly. "I don't want you to hurt the animal, Thomas. I want to understand what's going on." That night, while everyone was asleep, Maria had a restless sleep. She dreamt of the sound of the eagle's wings, the animal's steady gaze, and Ellie crying. When she woke up, sweating, and with her heart racing, she realized that the bedroom window was open. She quickly got up to close it, but before she could do so, she heard the eagle's cry again, echoing in the darkness of the field. It was an omen that she didn't know how to interpret. But deep down, she felt that the tranquility they had known until then was about to be irretrievably shattered. The next morning, the tension was almost palpable. Maria woke up before dawn, but when she looked out of the kitchen window, she saw no sign of the eagle. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps it had gone. However, as the sun began to rise, the familiar cry cut through the air again, coming from the trees near the courtyard. Thomas was on the veranda, a cup of coffee in his hand and his rifle leaning against the side of his chair. He looked in the direction of the sound, frowning. "She's back," he muttered, unsurprised. "Thomas, don't leave Ellie outside today," Maria asked, her hands shaking as she put the coffee on the table. "Something's wrong. I can feel it." "You're exaggerating, Maria. I'll keep a close watch. There's nothing that eagle can do that I can't stop," he replied, trying to sound confident. But Maria noticed the hesitation in his voice. Outside, Ellie was playing with her rubber ball, throwing it against the fence and laughing as it bounced back. Maria alternated between making breakfast and looking out of the window, unable to relax. Thomas remained on the balcony, his eyes fixed on the tree line. Suddenly, the silence became awkward. Ellie stopped playing, her attention caught by something in the sky. Maria saw the exact moment when the huge bird emerged from the treetops, its wings spread in an elegant, menacing flight. "Thomas!" she shouted, her voice full of panic. He was already on his feet, shotgun in hand. "Ellie, come here now," he ordered as he ran down the steps. But Ellie, enchanted by the big bird, didn't move. Her little arms were raised towards the sky again, and she laughed, calling the animal Big Bird as she had done before. The eagle circled once, descending in a swooping flight. Maria ran outside, her heart racing, while her maternal instinct screamed in desperation. "No, no, no," she muttered to herself. Before Thomas or Maria could reach the girl, the eagle swooped down with frightening precision. Its talons closed on the fabric of Ellie's dress, lifting her off the ground for a few seconds. Maria's scream was deafening. Ellie!" she screamed, already feeling the tears coming. The girl let out a whimper, more out of surprise than pain. The eagle didn't make it very far. It seemed that the weight of the child and the swing of the dress made it impossible for the animal to take flight completely. Ellie was deposited on a wooden table in the center of the courtyard, which Thomas used to chop wood. "Let go of my daughter!" shouted Thomas, pointing his rifle but hesitating to fire for fear of hitting the girl. Maria ran towards the table, but the eagle spread its wings and let out a loud cry, warning her not to come any closer. It was a surreal moment, as if time had stopped. Thomas was paralyzed, not knowing whether to shoot or wait. Maria knelt on the ground, her hands on her chest, begging, "Please, don't hurt my little girl, please." Suddenly, the eagle took flight again, disappearing into the trees. Ellie sat on the table, confused, but without a scratch. Maria rushed over to her, grabbing her in a tight hug and frantically checking to see if she was hurt. "Is she all right?" Thomas asked, still holding the rifle. Maria looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "She is, but what was that, Thomas? Why would that eagle do that? He had no answers. He just put the rifle away and walked slowly towards them, his expression hardening. "I don't know, Maria, but it won't happen again." As Maria carried Ellie back inside, something shiny caught her eye near the table. It was a small piece of snakeskin lying on the floor. She frowned, not understanding what it meant. "Thomas, come and see this," she called. When he approached, he was confused too. "It looks like a piece of a snake, but what does it have to do with the eagle?" Maria didn't know, but something in the back of her mind began to form. This wasn't just an attack. There was something more going on, and the eagle, as scary as it was, didn't seem to be the real danger. Maria carried Ellie into the house, holding her tightly against her chest, as if afraid to let go. The little girl, innocent of the gravity of the moment, held her mother's hair in her little hands, playing distractedly. Thomas remained outside, staring at the piece of snakeskin on the floor, trying to put together the pieces of a puzzle he still didn't understand. Inside the kitchen, Maria sat Ellie down on a chair and began to wipe the girl's face with a damp cloth, as if to erase any trace of what had just happened. Her mind was working frantically, but no explanation seemed reasonable. The eagle's cry, the swooping flight, the attempt to take Ellie, and now, the piece of snakeskin. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Thomas entered, holding the piece of skin carefully, as if he feared it would disappear if he wasn't delicate. "Maria, this doesn't make sense. This snake, it doesn't look fresh. It looks like it's been abandoned for days. But why would it be here, near the table?" he asked, more to himself than to her. Maria shook her head, still trying to control her breathing. Maybe the eagle was warning us. I know it sounds crazy, but something about that behavior, it wasn't just an attack." Thomas frowned, crossing his arms. He was a practical man who believed in direct, tangible solutions. Theories about eagle alerts didn't fit into his worldview. "Maria, it's a bird of prey. She saw our girl and thought she was easy prey. That's what predators do. So why didn't you hurt her, Thomas? Why did you leave her on the table?" she replied, her voice heavy with emotion. "If she wanted to attack you, she would have done it, but she didn't." He had no answer for that. He just sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I'm going to stay closer to the courtyard for the next few days. I'm not leaving here without my rifle. Anything that tries to get close to Ellie, I'll end it." Maria shook her head, clearly unhappy with the solution, but she knew that arguing wouldn't do any good. Even so, a nagging doubt was growing inside her. Something about that eagle didn't seem natural. She felt it in every fiber of her body. Over the next few days, Maria hardly took her eyes off Ellie when she was in the courtyard. Thomas kept his promise to stay close by, but the constant presence of the shotgun at his side only increased Maria's anxiety. The eagle disappeared for a few days, but the silence seemed more oppressive than comforting. Then, On the fourth day, when Maria was finally beginning to believe that the danger had passed, the cry came again. It was louder this time, closer. She ran to the window and saw the huge bird perched on a low branch of the tree closest to the courtyard, her eyes fixed on Ellie, who was playing absent-mindedly with a piece of stick. "Thomas!" she called out, her voice full of urgency. He was already outside, rifle in hand, walking quickly towards the courtyard. The eagle didn't move, but spread its wings, as if ready to act. "Ellie, get over here now!" Maria shouted, opening the door. The girl raised her face, curious. But before she could move, the eagle took off. Maria held her breath, believing that the worst was about to happen. But, to her surprise, the bird didn't fly towards the girl. It swooped down in a swift, sharp dive, heading straight for the lawn a few meters from where Ellie was standing. The impact raised a handful of earth, and Maria screamed in despair. "Ellie!" She ran towards her daughter, but stopped abruptly when she saw what was happening. The eagle was on the ground, its talons embedded in something that was struggling frantically. Thomas approached, rifle still pointed, but lowered the barrel when he realized what it was. A huge rattlesnake, now motionless, its body writhing on the ground. Maria covered her mouth with her hands, horrified and relieved at the same time. Ellie was standing still, looking at the scene with curious, innocent eyes. "My God," murmured Maria. The eagle let go of the snake and tried to take off again, but fell awkwardly, one of its wings dragging on the ground. It was injured, probably from the impact of the attack. Thomas stood still, trying to process what he was seeing. Maria. She saved our daughter. Maria ran to Ellie, taking her in her arms, as silent tears streamed down her face. The eagle stood there, motionless, as if waiting for something. She didn't seem afraid of the humans who were approaching. She knew the snake was there, murmured Maria, squeezing Ellie against her. "Thomas, we can't leave her like this." Thomas looked at the animal, his hard expression softening as he understood what had really happened. "Let's take care of her. It's the least we can do." Maria nodded, still trembling, and the two of them moved to help the eagle, while Ellie, from her mother's lap, pointed at the bird and said with a smile, "Good bird." At that moment, Maria knew that she would never see that creature with the same eyes again. Thomas put his rifle away and knelt down next to the eagle, which was now breathing heavily, its wings partially spread over the grass. He hesitated for a moment, assessing the animal. The sharp talons and curved beak were still intimidating, but there was something in its posture, a kind of resignation that made him act carefully. "She's really hurt," Thomas murmured, moving slowly so as not to frighten the bird. "Do you think she'll let us help her?" Maria asked, still holding Ellie, but her eyes fixed on the eagle. Despite the fear she felt, there was also a deep respect. "We don't have a choice. If we don't do anything, she'll die," replied Thomas, his voice low. Maria nodded, watching as he took out the handkerchief in his pocket and used it to protect his hands before trying to lift the eagle. The animal didn't react violently. It seemed too exhausted to resist. Thomas carefully managed to partially wrap it up, avoiding its claws and beak. "Maria, open the balcony door. Let's get her inside. At least until I can improvise something better in the barn." Maria rushed to open the door, still nervous. "Are you sure it's safe? What if she reacts?" "She's in no condition to attack. We just need to keep her calm," he replied, as he carefully carried the animal inside. Ellie watched curiously. "Daddy, is the bird hurt?" Maria smiled, even in the midst of the tension. "Yes, dear, but we're going to help him, okay?" Ellie nodded seriously, as if she understood the importance of that moment. Thomas improvised a space on the kitchen floor, using a thick blanket and a box to support the eagle. Maria brought a basin of water and some clean cloths. The bird's right wing looked dislocated, and there was a shallow wound on its chest. Thomas examined it carefully, doing his best to treat the wounds with the few resources they had. "She's huge," I've never seen anything like that up close, commented Maria, amazed and nervous at the same time. Yes, and very brave. If it weren't for her, Maria... Thomas couldn't finish his sentence. Just the thought of what might have happened to Ellie was unbearable. Maria put her hand on his shoulder. She saved our daughter. Thomas, let's do everything we can for her. Night fell, and the eagle remained motionless in the corner of the kitchen. Ellie, without fully understanding what was happening, insisted on staying close, pointing at the bird and repeating, "Good bird." Maria had to distract her with toys and stories so that she wouldn't disturb the bird. Even so, her mind couldn't shake the image of the snake attack. Why was the eagle there? And how had she known about the danger? The more she thought about it, the more she felt that this was no coincidence. The next morning, Thomas left early to pick up supplies in town. Maria was left alone with Ellie and the eagle, whose gaze seemed more vigilant, although still exhausted. Maria approached slowly, feeling a mixture of fear and fascination. You knew there was a snake there, didn't you?" she whispered, even though she knew it was impossible to get an answer. The eagle blinked slowly, keeping its eyes fixed on her. It was an almost human look, something that made Maria shiver. Feeling foolish, she continued talking. "I don't know why you're here, but thank you. For Ellie." Suddenly, a sound behind her made her turn around. Ellie was standing in the kitchen doorway, looking out with a broad smile on her face. "Mom, there's another bird in there." Maria froze. Cautiously, she went to the door and looked out into the courtyard. In the surrounding trees, 2 more eagles were perched, watching silently. "My God," whispered Maria, feeling that the situation was becoming even more mysterious. What did their presence mean? Why now? As these questions formed in her mind, Maria noticed something strange. The new eagles didn't look threatening. Like the first, their gaze seemed fixed on Ellie. But there was something else, something protective. When Thomas returned home and Maria told him what she had seen, he looked at her seriously. "That's not normal, Maria. Eagles don't act like that." "I know that. But maybe there's something bigger going on here. Something we can't understand." Thomas didn't answer. He just looked out of the window, seeing the eagles still in the trees. Deep down, he knew that Maria was right. There was something else behind those visits. Something that was only just beginning to reveal itself. Over the next few days, the presence of the eagles became constant. They seemed to take turns, always keeping an eye on the house and especially the courtyard. Thomas, initially skeptical, now remained alert, but no longer wielded his shotgun. He began to accept that those birds were there for a reason beyond his immediate comprehension. Meanwhile, the wounded eagle, now nicknamed Queen by Ellie, was showing signs of recovery. Although her wing was still compromised, she was more alert, moving around a little more each day. Maria prepared small pieces of meat to feed her and, to her surprise, the bird accepted without resistance, as if she had understood that the family was there to help her. One morning, while Thomas was in the barn, Maria was in the kitchen watching Ellie play in the yard. The little girl giggled loudly, trying to catch butterflies that flew past her. The eagles were still perched in the trees nearby, like tireless guardians. It was then that Maria saw something that made her drop the plate she was holding. A shadow moved quickly across the grass, a sinuous and deadly figure. It was a snake, bigger than any she had ever seen, advancing straight towards Ellie. "Thomas!" Maria shouted, her voice full of panic, as she ran for the door. Ellie, innocent of the danger, continued to play, oblivious to the threat that was crawling just a few meters away. Maria knew she wouldn't make it in time. Fear froze her body for a moment, but before she could react, a powerful sound broke the silence. The shrill cry of an eagle echoed, followed by the flapping of wings. 2 of the eagles in the trees dived at the same time. One of them reached the snake first, digging its talons into the reptile's body, while the other flew in circles, as if surveying its surroundings. The impact was so strong that the snake struggled furiously before lying still. The danger was neutralized. Thomas rushed over, astonished by the scene. He looked at Maria, who was standing in the doorway, pale, and then at the eagles in the courtyard. Again. "They've saved our daughter again," he said, almost out of breath. Maria fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she hugged Ellie, who was now crying, frightened by the noise and tension around her. "Thank you," Maria murmured, looking at the eagles who were now watching her back, as if they understood her gratitude. As the weeks passed, it became clear to the family that these birds were not just occasional visitors. Their presence was constant, and their actions spoke louder than any scientific explanation could justify. Thomas stopped seeing the eagles as threats and began to notice details he had previously ignored. The way they always positioned themselves at strategic points, as if keeping watch. The way the queen seemed to emit specific sounds that made the others react. Maria, for her part, began to accept the idea that these creatures were there for a greater purpose. The connection between Ellie and the queen was inexplicable. Whenever the girl approached the bird, even with her childlike innocence, the eagle remained calm, watching her with almost gentle eyes. Ellie, without any fear, spoke to the bird as if it were her closest friend. "Good bird, protective bird," she said, lightly stroking the bird's wing. Maria and Thomas watched these interactions with reverence and a little amazement. They knew that what they were witnessing was something extraordinary, something that would remain forever in the history of their lives. At the beginning of the summer, the queen finally regained her strength. Her wing, although not completely functional, allowed her to fly short distances. Maria and Thomas knew that the time to let her go was near. They prepared the courtyard for her departure, but Ellie seemed reluctant to let her friend go. "I don't want her to go, Mommy," said the girl, holding Maria's hand. Maria bent down, looking into Ellie's eyes. "Darling, the queen needs to go back to her place. But you know what? She'll always be around, looking after you." Ellie seemed to ponder this for a moment before nodding. "Okay, but I'll miss her." The morning the queen took off for the first time, all the other eagles joined her. Maria, Thomas, and Ellie watched in silence as the birds took to the skies, disappearing over the horizon. The feeling that remained was not one of loss, but of gratitude. From that day on, the family never saw the eagles so close again. But Maria and Thomas noticed that the courtyard remained protected from any predators. Ellie grew up healthy, and the story of the eagles became a memory they remembered fondly. Deep down in their souls, they knew that the bond between the girl and those majestic creatures was something that transcended human understanding. The queen, even far away, remained a symbol of protection and of an inexplicable bond between two species that, for a brief and extraordinary moment, shared a destiny.